John Adams once said, "There is nothing which I dread so much as division of the republic into two great parties, each arranged under its leader and concerting measures in opposition to each other." I agree that third parties should have a voice and that the two-party system is both eroding trust in the government and tiring its citizens over the same basic issues year after year. In my speech, I will offer a rebuttal as to why third parties have such difficulty in America and why this argument likely will not come to fruition for a multitude of reasons. First, I will cover the advocate's ill with the third-party issue. Second, I will discuss who the advocate believes is responsible for the issue or who the blame of the problem lies with. Third, I will cover the advocate's cure for solving the third-party issue. Last, I will talk about the cost-benefit analysis of the advocate's argument. With each, I will discuss my rebuttal for the advocate's argument. Although I myself do agree with the core argument, I will discuss why this most likely will not become reality in America in the near future. In the advocate's ill, the advocate believes the issue currently is the lack of representation and choice for voters. Voters are currently stuck deciding two major political parties that some voters do not agree with and therefore lacking representation in Congress. The advocate states that a survey that revealed a majority of Americans feel their members of Congress do not represent them best from a survey in 2019. My rebuttal to this is that even though I agree with the sentiment, these two juggernaut parties dominate too much of the landscape and have such established bases that it simply doesn't allow a third party to flourish. Although many Americans feel they aren't being correctly represented, there are simply no viable third-party options established. I believe, along with the sentiment that they aren't correctly being represented, there's a similar line of thinking that by voting for an under-established third party, they will essentially have no representation at all, and therefore their vote is in effect null. I understand the advocate wants to implement policy for third parties in debates to begin this transition. However, it would take generation upon generation for a third-party base to rival that of the two dominant parties. And that is if only the third party's platforms are legitimately strong enough to challenge the established. Next, the advocate discusses the blame of the topic. The advocate believes it is a multitude of things. It can be proposed on the two major parties or even a combination of the people. The advocate states that 64% of trust in each other is shrinking. This is a shocking statistic and a worrying trend. For my rebuttal, I agree entirely with this blame. The statistic that 64% of trust in each other is shrinking is telling, and by extrapolating from this statistic, it therefore makes it even much more difficult for a third party to become established. If the trust between each other is fragmenting, it makes it to a point where a third party would have to be highly prolific to gather this trust again. The advocate's cure is that it should be a requirement to have third parties participate in debates to broaden the view of voters is a good idea. However, oftentimes, and as stated by the advocate with issues that are brought up by third parties, is that the two major parties simply adopt the most favorable aspects of a third party into a version of their own and pander it to their base, to both bully the third party and boost their own base. The final part is the cost benefit. The advocate discusses many issues with the two parties against the third, and in many cases, these are accurate. In America, majority rule simply makes third party extremely difficult. If a third party policies take away the base of one of the two dominant parties, it just leaves the most dominant party to rule almost unopposed because now one of the majority parties are too weak to win elections. A common issue with third parties is oftentimes, such as in presidential elections, third parties do have a platform and are in debates, but simply never have the steam, momentum, and drive to get any sort of large-scale attention. Many times voters have to give up on supporting this third party because the party they most disagree with will begin to garner a lead. Other issues that are already present for the two-party system don't help third parties in any way and continue to punish third parties are things such as gerrymandering. With the concept of gerrymandering, which is separating a county or district based off the number of votes to their voters, it essentially decimates a third party's chance at gaining or winning over a district. Another more large-scale issue is the Electoral College in America. Both are gone off the plurality system as stated by the advocate. This is the single-member district and voting system arrangement in which the greatest number of votes wins the election. A change from this system to a proportional vote system would highly encourage the advocate's policy and legitimately make it viable to bring the advocate's idea to fruition. A proportional electoral voting system would greatly benefit a third party by allocating congressional, representative, district, or any legislative seat to parties based on vote share. This would actually give representation to those that the advocate believes are not represented in the legislative system. As a rebuttal, I'm finding weaknesses in the advocate's argument, but not entirely arguing against it, but rather to point out the weaknesses and, in effect, bolster it. The advocate makes many solid arguments, and I agree with core issues, even though I am pointing out places of fault. But this helps to overall strengthen the argument by finding both strengths and weaknesses to broaden the argument and bring it about to a more logically sound place of discussion. Thank you.